Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare
Hare Krishna devotees, speaks as my humble obeisance, all glory to Srila Prabhupada. Welcome devotees to our evening Bhagavad Gita circle. Today we will be continuing into the chapter 6 of Bhagavad Gita, verse 25. And Pritchard Prabhu is actually covering for Balabhadra Prabhu today. So without any further delay, we will just jump right in and start on the reading program. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimadi Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharini Nirveshesha Sunyavari Paschatya Deshacharini Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadha Sivachari Gaura Bhakta Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare. Good afternoon, dear devotees. So we continue Bhagavad Gita circle with Bhagavad Gita chapter 6, which is entitled Dhyan Yoga, text 25. Shane Shane Uparamet Udyaditi Grihitaya Atma Stam Mana Kriva Nakinchit Api Chintayet. Translation by Srila Prabhupada. Gradually, step by step, one should become situated in trance by means of intelligence sustained by full conviction, and thus the mind should be fixed on the self alone and should think of nothing else. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. By proper conviction and intelligence, one should gradually cease sense activities. That is called pratyahara. The mind being controlled by conviction, meditation, and cessation from the senses should be situated in trance or samadhi. At that time, there is no longer any danger of becoming engaged in the material conception of life. In other words, although one is involved with matter as long as the material body exists, one should not think about sense gratification. One should think of no pleasure aside from the pleasure of the Supreme Self. This state is easily attained by directly practicing Krishna consciousness. Text 26. Yato yato nishalati manaschanchalam ashtiram tatastato niyam yetad atmanye vavasham nayet. Translation by Srila Prabhupada. From wherever the mind wanders due to its flickering and unsteady nature, one must certainly withdraw it and bring it back under the control of the self. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The nature of the mind is flickering and unsteady, but the self-realized yogi has to control the mind. The mind should not control him. One who controls the mind and therefore the senses as well is called Goswami or Swami, and one who is controlled by the mind is called Godasa, or the servant of the senses. A Goswami knows the standard of sense happiness. In transcendental sense happiness, the senses are engaged in the service of Rishikesh, or the supreme owner of the senses, Krishna. Serving Krishna with purified senses is called Krishna consciousness. That is the way of bringing the senses under full control. What is more, that is the highest perfection of yoga practice. Text 27. Prashanta manasam hirnam yoginam shukam uttamam upeti shantarajasam brahma bhutam akalmasam. Translation by Srila Prabhupada. The yogi whose mind is fixed on me verily attains the highest perfection of transcendental happiness. He is beyond the mode of passion. He realizes his qualitative identity with the Supreme, and thus he is freed from all reactions to past deeds. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Brahma Bhuta is the state of being free from material contamination and situated in the transcendental service of the Lord. Mad Bhaktim Lavate Param, Bhagavad Gita 18:54. One cannot remain in the quality of Brahman, the Absolute, until one's mind is fixed on the lotus feet of the Lord. Savayamana Krishna Padaravindayo. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 9, Chapter 4, Text 18. To be always engaged in the transcendental loving service of the Lord, or to remain in Krishna consciousness, is to be factually liberated from the mode of passion and all material contamination. Text 28. Yunjan evam sadatmanam yogi vikata kalmasha sukena brahma samspasham Aryantam Sukam Ashnute. Translation by Srila Prabhupada. Thus, the self-controlled yogi, constantly engaged in yoga practice, becomes free from all material contamination and achieves the highest stage of perfect happiness in transcendental loving service to the Lord. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Self-realization means knowing one's constitutional position in relationship to the Supreme. The individual soul is part and parcel of the Supreme, and his position is to render transcendental service to the Lord. This transcendental contact with the Supreme is called Brahma Samsparsha. Text 29. Sarvabhutastam Atmanam Sarvabhutani Chatmani Ikshate Yoga Yuktama Sarvatra Samadashana. Translation by Srila Prabhupada. A true yogi observes me in all beings and also sees every being in me. Indeed, the self-realized person sees me, the same Supreme Lord, everywhere. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. A Krishna-conscious yogi is the perfect seer because he sees Krishna, the Supreme, situated in everyone's heart as Supersoul, Paramatma. Ishvara Sarvabhutanam Hrideshe Arjuna Tishtati. The Lord in his Paramatma feature is situated within both the heart of a dog and that of a Brahmana. The perfect yogi knows that the Lord is eternally transcendental and is not materially affected by his presence in either a dog or a Brahmana. That is the supreme neutrality of the Lord. The individual soul is also situated in the individual heart, but he is not present in all hearts. That is the distinction between the individual soul and the super soul. One who is not factually in the practice of yoga cannot see so clearly. A Krishna-conscious person can see Krishna in the heart of both the believer and the non-believer. In the Smriti Satvata Tantra 3.49, this is confirmed as follows. Atat atatavach na matvat atma hi paramo hari. The Lord, being the source of all beings, is like the mother and the maintainer. As the mother is neutral to all different kinds of children, the Supreme Father or Mother is also. Consequently, the Supersoul is always in every living being. Outwardly also, every living being is situated in the energy of the Lord. As will be explained in the 7th chapter, The Lord has primarily two energies, the spiritual or superior and the material or inferior. The living entity, although part of the superior energy, is conditioned by the inferior energy. The living entity is always in the Lord's energy. Every living entity is situated in him in one way or another. The yogi sees equally because he sees that all living entities, although in different situations, according to the results of fruitive work, in all circumstances, remain the servants of God. While in the material energy, the living entity serves the material senses, and while in the spiritual energy, he serves the Supreme Lord directly. In either case, the living entity is a servant of God. This vision of equality is perfect in a person in Krishna consciousness. Text 30. Yo mam pashyati sarvatra sarvam cha mai pashyati tasyaham napanashyami sacha me napanashyati. Translation by Srila Prabhupada. For one who sees me everywhere and sees everything in me, I am never lost, nor is he ever lost to me. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. A person in Krishna consciousness certainly sees Lord Krishna everywhere, and he sees everything in Krishna. Such a person may appear to see all separate manifestations of the material nature, but in each and every instance, he is conscious of Krishna, knowing that everything is a manifestation of Krishna's energy. Nothing can exist without Krishna, and Krishna is the Lord of everything. This is the basic principle of Krishna consciousness. Krishna consciousness is the development of love of Krishna, a position transcendental even to material liberation. At this stage of Krishna consciousness, beyond self-realization, the devotee becomes one with Krishna in the sense that Krishna becomes everything for the devotee, and the devotee becomes full in loving Krishna. An intimate relationship between the Lord and the devotee then exists. In that stage, the living entity can never be annihilated, nor is the personality of Godhead ever out of the sight of the devotee. To merge in Krishna is spiritual annihilation. A devotee takes no such risk. It is stated in the Brahma Samhita 5.38, Premanjana Chirita Bhakti Vilo Chanena, Santa Sadeva Hidayeshu Viloyakayanti, Sam Shama Sundaram Achintya Gunaswarupam Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Vajami. I worship the primeval Lord Govinda, who is always seen by the devotee whose eyes are anointed with the pulp of love. He is seen in his eternal form of Shamasundara, situated within the heart of the devotee. At this stage, Lord Krishna never disappears from the sight of the devotee, nor does the devotee ever lose sight of the Lord. In the case of a yogi who sees the Lord as Paramatma within the heart, the same applies. Such a yogi turns into a pure devotee and cannot bear to live for a moment without seeing the Lord within himself. Text 31. Sarva bhuta sitam yomam vajate katvam astita sarvata vartamanopi sayugi mai vartate. Translation by Srila Prabhupada. Such a yogi who engages in the worshipful service of the Supersoul, knowing that I and the Supersoul within all creatures are one, remains always in me in all circumstances. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. A yogi who is practicing meditation on the Supersoul sees within himself the plenary portion of Krishna as Vishnu, with 4 hands, holding conch shell, wheel, club, and lotus flower. The yogi should know that Vishnu is not different from Krishna. Krishna in this form of Supersoul is situated in everyone's heart. Furthermore, there is no difference between the innumerable Supersouls present in the innumerable hearts of living entities. Nor is there a difference between A Krishna conscious person always engaged in the transcendental love and service of Krishna, and a perfect yogi engaged in the meditation on the supersoul. The yogi in Krishna consciousness, even though he may be engaged in various activities while in material existence, remains always situated in Krishna. This is confirmed in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu 1.2.187 of Srila Rupa Goswami. Nikala Shvapi Avastasu Jivan Mukta Sa Uchite. A devotee of the Lord, always acting in Krishna consciousness, is automatically liberated. In the Narada Pancharatra, this is confirmed in this way. Dik Kaladhyanta Anavachine, Krishna Cheto Vidyaya Cha Tanmayo Bhavati Shipram Jivo Brahmani Yo Jayet. By concentrating one's attention on the transcendental form of Krishna, who is all-pervading and beyond time and space, one becomes absorbed in thinking of Krishna and then attains the happy state of transcendental association with him. Krishna consciousness is the highest stage of trance in yoga practice. This very understanding that Krishna is present as Paramatma in everyone's heart makes the yogi faultless. The Vedas, Gopatapani Upanishad 3.2, confirm this inconceivable potency of the Lord as follows. Eka Pishan Bahudha Yo Vabhati. Although the Lord is one, he is present in innumerable hearts as many. Similarly, in the Smriti Shastra Matcha Purana, it is said, Eka Eva Paro Vishnu Sarva Vyapi Nasamshaya. Aishvaryad Rupam Ekam Cha Suryavat Bahude Yate. Vishnu is one, and yet he is certainly all-pervading. By his inconceivable potency, in spite of his one form, he is present everywhere, as the sun appears in many places at once. Text 32. Atma Pamyena Sarvatra Samam Pashyati Yojuna Sukham Vayali Vaduklam Sayugi Paramo Mata. Translation by Srila Prabhupada. He is a perfect yogi who, by comparison to his own self, sees the true equality of all beings in both their happiness and their distress, O Arjuna. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. One who is Krishna conscious is a perfect yogi. He is aware of everyone's happiness and distress by dint of his own personal experience. The cause of a distress of a living entity is forgetfulness of his relationship with God. And the cause of happiness is knowing Krishna to be the supreme enjoyer of all the activities of the human being, the proprietor of all lands and planets, and the sincerest friend of all living entities. The perfect yogi knows that the living being who is conditioned by the modes of material nature is subjected to the threefold material miseries due to forgetfulness of his relationship with Krishna. And because one in Krishna consciousness is happy, he tries to distribute the knowledge of Krishna everywhere. Since the perfect yogi tries to broadcast the importance of becoming Krishna conscious, he is the best philanthropist in the world, and he is the dearest servitor of the Lord. Nacha tasmin manusheshu kaschin me priya krisitama. Bhagavad Gita, chapter 18, text 69. In other words, a devotee of the Lord always looks to the welfare of all living entities. And in this way, he is factually the friend of everyone. He is the best yogi because he does not desire perfection in yoga for his personal benefit, but tries for others also. He does not envy his fellow living entities. Here is a contrast between a pure devotee of the Lord and a yogi interested only in his personal elevation. The yogi who has withdrawn to a secluded place in order to meditate perfectly may not be as perfect as a devotee who is trying his best to turn every man toward Krishna consciousness. Shri Prabhupada ki jai.
Very nice points by Srila Prabhupada in all his purports. Pretty amazing. Thank you so much for reading. Would like to ask devotees if you have any questions, any comments, even anything that has really struck you in these few verses that we have read, and share your takeaways, your thoughts. Yes, Mother Gita, please, Mother.
Hare Krishna, please accept my humble obeisances always to
Accept
Srila
mine.
Prabhupada. I'm simply amazed how Srila Prabhupada, in practically all purports, he mentions Krishna consciousness. It's like everything boils down to becoming conscious of Krishna. And how we do that, he's just giving us the process. How, by thinking of Krishna, being conscious of him all the time, that we can go back to Godhead. So the word Krishna consciousness, very, very important.
Thank you very much. Wonderful realization from this.
Yes, because that was, and the last sentence of this purport, as Mother Gita was saying, in all the other purports, I'm sure Shri Prabhupada knew that, it's going to come to a stage where our minds are not going to be so, controlled. And so he's repeatedly reminding us that each time we read these two words, Krishna consciousness, and I've heard Mother Gita speak in her classes too, how to be, the point is conscious of the Lord, conscious of Krishna. That was a very nice point too. And always reminding us. And I also like how, as you were reading, where I think it's this verse, where Shri Prabhupada says to always look to the welfare of all living entities. To me, to my little understanding, is seeing Krishna, in all these living entities and helping them and being compassionate to them. I think, and he said, actually the friend of everyone. I thought that was a very nice point, because, Shri Prabhupada is reminding us that as a devotee of the Lord and being Krishna conscious, we have to learn to be a friend to everyone. And I think sometimes that becomes a challenge, I think, for some people. And I wanted to ask if you could speak on that, because sometimes as devotees, unknowingly or knowingly, we kind of draw a fine line.
Well, Shri Prabhupada said in this last one that we read, 632, chapter 632, the purport, he defines why he says the friend for everyone. First, he talks about perfect yogi tries to broadcast the importance of becoming Krishna conscious. To broadcast the importance of becoming Krishna conscious is the best philanthropic work in the world, because the more people that hear about Krishna consciousness and connect with it, the more that freedom and liberation and going back to the spiritual world becomes available to those people who hear. So you can give something, as Papa describes, you can give money for buildings in a hospital and all of those for the mode of goodness is wonderful, but it does not mean that it helps those who are coming in there go back to Godhead, because it's a material thing. But a person who tags Krishna consciousness in everything that they do or preaches directly Krishna consciousness to people is actually looking to the welfare of them. We are in a reformatory. So anyone who tells us how to get out of the reformatory is actually seeking our welfare, getting out of the jail. And so from that standpoint, he is practically the friend of everyone. Now, when it comes to relationships, sometimes disagreements is be there. Well, that's the nature of the world, where there's material happiness and distress, and disagreements can sometimes cause distress. There's ways to deal with it, But the fact is, as long as we are getting people to do devotional service, the activity itself, there are 9 ways to do that, the hearing, the chanting, and the others, which are very important. That is a friendly and important gesture to everybody. So even when there are situations where a person is not, for material, personal reasons, comfortable with another person, but they are still involved in helping them to do devotional service, that, from a spiritual standpoint, that person is still a friend. So he's looking at friendship from a spiritual standpoint, not necessarily from a material standpoint.
Yes, that was a nice reminder. Yeah, how we can be a friend from a spiritual standpoint. Yes, thank you.
And that's what Krishna likes.
Yeah, it reminds me of whenever I read such sentences, friend to all, I always remember a darshan that we had with His Holiness Bhaktitirtha Swami back in, I want to say, late 90s in Gitanagari. And he said that as devotees, even if we don't know how to, and he says, as devotees, even when we are in the grocery store, and if there's someone standing in line, in the cash register, or someone behind, even just the fact that we just greet them is Krishna conscious, how's your day? Good morning. How, just that he was saying it's Krishna conscious. And I was just remembering that as you were reading that part of the verse. Was pretty powerful from a Krishna conscious standpoint, as you were mentioning,
Krishna consciousness is pure goodness, but the mode of goodness is what you described also, to be nice to people, to be helpful to people. Somebody's coming, you open the door for them, even in a grocery place, for them to be able to, whatever situation they're in, to be of help to them. Always brings a smile to a person's face. And that person is more than likely going to hear you if you bring up things about Krishna consciousness, because you acted nicely to them. So this is the key in which we can, relate to people and get them to be interested in what we are about, which is definitely the type of activity that Krishna is also pleased by, which we were just talking about here.
Thank you. Any other questions from devotees? Any other sharing, takeaways, thoughts? How was appreciating when you were reading, and when you started off reading verse 25? I remember what I remember from the purport. Prabhupada was talking about the mind, controlling the mind, telling Arjuna. That was like, for us, at least for me, it's a never-ending situation. Whereas devotees, as Kali Yuga is progressing, controlling the mind is so difficult, and especially engaging the mind in service. It's go ahead, please.
Krishna always.
Yes.
Thinking about Krishna always is that samadhi situation that Krishna is talking. That's being talked about here. Srila Prabhupada described also. So it's not a situation where we have to go through different asanas and so on and be still in the woods somewhere in order to be in the trance, but to remember Krishna always. In other words, around us, we can surround ourselves with things that remind us of Krishna, and we can hear Krishna bhajans, we can hear constant chanting softly in the background of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. That way all the time, even our subconscious is picking up. The subconscious is always active. Even when our conscious mind is doing something else, the subconscious is picking up things that are around us. So that way we can remain connected with Krishna. And whether we're reading is also talked about, that a devotee who always thinks about Krishna, never loses sight of that person, and he doesn't lose sight of Krishna either. And that's the best situation to be in. How we're going to be happy is from that, remembering Krishna and serving Krishna and Krishna's devotees. Hare Krishna. It also helps us, by the way. One more point.
Okay. Sure, because that's a question that I don't want to forget. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. Go. Then that's the question.
Is that okay? Okay. And
Yeah.
this is from I'm thinking it's from Prasad Prabhu, because he asked very nice questions. He says, Varsha, he says, Hare Krishna Prabhuji, from verse 31, Vrinda, if you can go back to verse 31, does it indicate that there is a soul and a super soul in every living entity?
In one short sentence, in one short answer, in fact, in one word, yes. There is soul. Soul is the symptom of consciousness. The body is alive, appears to be moving because the soul is there. The activities of the body, the activities are permitted by the super soul. So the super soul is also present in every entity. Every entity. And that's how it's pervading. As a matter of fact, there was one example or one analogy given by Agastya Rishi. This is in Garga Samhita, describing Pradyumna met him, and it was a conversation between Pradyumna and Agastya Rishi. So Pradyumna asked him to talk a little bit more about the Krishna consciousness, modes of nature, and so on. So Agastya Muni described the super soul like, the sun is in one place, the Lord is in one place, but it's also everywhere. So it's almost like you can have 1,000,000 parts of water and the sun is out there, but you can see the sun's reflection in all of them. At the same time, the sun is where it is. Okay. So that's the example that he gave. Of course, in this case, we're not seeing a reflection of a super soul in us, but an expansion. This is super soul fullness still in every living entity. So the soul gives consciousness, the super soul is there for every living entity, both. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. And Prabhu said that helps, so that was good. And that's a nice question. Very nice question. We all learned. Yes, absolutely. Any other last minute questions, comments, reflections?
I wanted to do one more comment. But
yes, please.
At the very end, the Prabhupada made.
Are you talking about verse 32?
I think, yeah, verse 32.
Okay, I have to. Vrinda's going to go to that verse now. There you go.
Yeah. The very last sentence. Very, very important for us. The yogi who has withdrawn to a secluded place in order to meditate perfectly may not be as perfect as the devotee who is trying his best to turn every man toward Krishna consciousness. So that's a message for us. Krishna consciousness should not be looked at as a situation for ourselves only. We also should really try very hard to get others to turn toward Krishna consciousness. And if you think about it, that's the best thing to do, because we are all in this reformatory, in the jail. Being Krishna consciousness is what frees us. So when we try to get men, all people, to start their journey towards liberation through Krishna consciousness, then more people are getting a chance to get out of jail, which is better than a person who doesn't say anything at all and in a secluded place. That's for him or herself. So we should be compassionate by getting more people involved, somehow start their royal path to devotion back to Godhead. Hare Krishna.
Thank you for sharing that. Thank you so much. That was a nice point to conclude this beautiful reading. I just want to make sure there's any last minute reflections, thoughts, any takeaways, and also a humble reminder about tomorrow morning's class. It's going just for tomorrow. It's going to be at 7 in the morning, and it's going to be with His Holiness Chandramauli Swami. And I really, really encourage everyone to join. It's so nice to hear from Maharaj. So sweet, and we're very fortunate to have his darshan every other week and hear his great wisdom and, and his blessings. So please do join us tomorrow, 7 in the morning with His Holiness Chandramali Swami. Until then, Vantraka Putibhyascha, Kripa Sindhubevacha, Patitanam Pavanebhyo, Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.
Jai.